Hello, good evening, and welcome to our Breast Cancer Now's Facebook Live session, where tonight we'll be talking about anything to do with sleep deprivation. It's a subject that it's such a common problem. A lot of negative connotations to sleep, lack of sleep, sleep deprivation, poor sleep hygiene, sleeplessness, but it is something that in the UK, I think that something like 1 in 3 people suffer from. And I think people that are having breast cancer treatment or having any cancer treatment or have had, it's probably even higher than that, the number of people that do have problems with their sleep. And what we want to do tonight is we're delighted to be joined by Dr. Mike Scanlon, who I will let speak to you in a moment, and he'll be giving you some information on uh, reasons why people might not be able to sleep or their lack of sleep, and strategies to hopefully to help cope with that. But before I do, just to say that if you want to post any comments or questions during the session, we'll try and answer as many as we can as we go along. I think we're quite happy to sort of answer those as we go if they come along. But if we don't get round to answering them all, we will actually be able to answer them as soon as possible after the session. So don't worry, and you can always call our helpline, which we'll put the number up at the end when it opens again at 9 o'clock, or you can leave a voicemail if you've got any questions for myself or any of the nurses that I work with. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to Mike, and he'll give you an introduction about what he does, and hopefully give you some really good tips. Thanks, Mike.
Oh, thank you very much, Addie. And yeah, just really pleased to be with you all tonight. So I've been working in mental health. It feels like forever, and I sort of had a go at retiring last year, and I'm really bad at retiring. So I'm enjoying being with you tonight. And I've worked within mental health, and I've had a particular interest in sleep. And I think of sleep as the seedbed of good mental and physical health. And I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. It's kind of like the foundations of of health. Really, I think there's a truth to that. And the problem with sleep and understanding sleep, and as I've been trying to do for many years, is you can try and get somebody. You should try this one time to describe what it feels like to actually fall asleep. Think about that just for a second. It's so difficult. You try and get your head around that because we sort of move from wakefulness into sleep, and that transition is something that we almost, well, we can't describe. And so it's one of those few things that happen to us as humans, that happens to us every single day of our lives. And it does happen at some level every single day of our lives because, you know, we have to sleep. We, we need sleep for various reasons. We need sleep to feel restored. We need sleep for, wait for it now, glymphatic clearance. God, look at that. So glymphatic clearance is where what happens is um, when we go to sleep at night and we go into a stage of sleep that's deep sleep, really good restorative deep sleep. In that deep sleep phase, the the neurology is so fascinating. It's a bit like there's a sort of sweep through of the debris within our brains. So our brains are churning and working, and cells are dying and restoring, and there's a sort of sludge as an effect of that. And so when we go into a very deep, good restorative level of sleep, we get this glymphatic clearance, which is where we wake up in the morning feeling refreshed. When we wake up in the morning and we don't feel refreshed, it's usually because we haven't had the right sleep architecture. And what that means is we haven't had, for us, the right deep sleep and REM sleep, because we need
Right.
both. you know, and we need these different this sleep architecture to be sort of vaguely right. And if we, for instance, depressed people or people with a great many conditions, one of which, fascinatingly, is chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, those sorts of conditions. Classically, what we find um, when we look at brain scans of people struggling with those sorts of conditions, is that they've been in REM sleep for more than 2/3 of the night.
Sorry,
So
Mike, can
that's,
you explain REM sleep, the REM
yeah, for
part of
some
it?
reason,
Yeah.
there's a little things. Oh, it's gone. So REM sleep is the rapid eye movement sleep when our eyes move very, very fast. Now, REM sleep is just the most fascinating thing because if we, as human beings, when we walk forwards, our eyes move from side to side. And the eyes moving from side to side allows us to process. So when we're asleep, our eyes are like, it's like our body is moving forward in the dream. So we're moving forward in the dream, and our eyes are moving from side to side, rapid eye movements. And those rapid eye movements are helping us process the stuff of the day. If we've got too much stuff going on, we're very stressed, we're very anxious, we're overactivated, we've eaten a big meal before supper time, which is never before bedtime, which is never a good idea. Then sometimes our brain get stuck in REM sleep. So we have maybe 2/3 of the night in REM sleep, and we don't get that lymphatic clearance from the deep wave sleep. So we wake up in the morning feeling restored. So one of the questions that doctors classically ask their patients is, are you sleeping well? And people listen to that, and what they hear is, are you getting your 8 hours?
Yeah.
We don't need
It's
8 hours.
no.
You just don't. You need what you need for you. And sometimes the problem with that is that we get very, very stuck on the amount of time that we
Yeah.
slept for. What matters more is that when we wake up in the morning and we check in with ourselves, we're able to say, do you know, I feel restored.
So
And
quality, isn't it? Quality over
yeah,
quantity.
it's
Yeah.
quality is what matters, and
Yeah.
the quality is determined by whether we're having enough REM sleep to process the stuff of the day. Because if we don't, we wake up feeling on edge and anxious,
Yeah.
which is why most people with anxiety are worse in the mornings
Right.
because stuff isn't usually processing all the way through,
Yeah.
So mornings are nearly always difficult for anxious people because we wake without that restorative sleep. But what we need is both. And
Yeah.
so my talk with you tonight, my talk with all the lovely people coming in tonight, Addie, is really about how we achieve that sleep architecture, how you have a better chance of restorative sleep. So we're going to talk about the paradoxical sleep effect. Don't worry about it yet. I'll explain that in a few moments. We're going to have a bit of a think about sleep hygiene. Um, but I'm going to make a really sort of bold statement about that. You wait for it. It is quite bold. We're going to look at the way we think about sleep, because sometimes the way we think about our sleep creates a fear in itself. We sort of talk ourselves into a level of worry about our sleep. I'm going to talk about the double-edged sword of control, because very often the more you try and desperately try to sleep, the less effective it is. And those people that try and try and try to sleep might sleep, but they don't get restorative sleep. We need to be relaxed when we go to bed. And we're going to have a look at some mindful strategies. I'm not going to be suggesting that you have to meditate for 40 minutes a day to sleep well, so don't worry about that. So that's what I would like to begin to cover. Rather than start with the whole issue of the sleep hygiene, I'd just like to look at what the 6 maintainers are, because there are 6 maintainers of poor sleep. And the first maintainer of poor sleep is, of course, poor hygiene, which we'll get to in a minute. The second one is worry. And that's where the paradoxical sleep effect comes in. So the paradoxical sleep effect is that paradoxically, we spend too much time worrying about whether or not I'll get a good night's sleep tonight, and then worrying the next day, I didn't get a good night's sleep. So what if this happens? What if I'm not as on the ball as I need to be? What if it's damaging me? What if it's causing myself problems? So we get into such a level of worry that paradoxically, worrying about it is becomes the reason why we don't sleep. And sleep scientists estimate that paradoxical sleep effect is probably the most pernicious, most common cause of insomnia. Because and it's no surprise, is it really, why we get into this? Because you can't. I noticed the other day there was a television program on. There's always TV programs, and it's always on the radio, and you can't open a magazine without an article about sleep. And they all have, I think, one real problem is they start off by telling you, if you don't sleep, this will happen to you, that terrible thing will happen to you, you won't do this, you won't get that. And actually, most of it is bunkum. We develop diseases for multifactorial reasons,
Yeah.
not because we just don't sleep well.
Yeah.
It's unhelpful,
No.
and it actually causes that worry. So paradoxically, it's unhelpful.
Mm. Yeah. And guilt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
guilt,
Yes.
guilt.
Oh.
Oh my goodness me! Don't even get me started. And shame. Sometimes people. I mean, you wouldn't think it possible that you could feel shame about not sleeping well, but it's almost as if you're failing in your duty as a human.
Mm.
Mad. Um, Unhelpful and inaccurate beliefs about sleep. What will
Yeah.
happen is a really important
Yeah.
maintainer. Another one, weirdly speaking, is getting a little bit too rigid. Psychological rigidity is never good. It doesn't work for us as humans. We're not meant to be psychologically rigid. And what I mean by that is when we hear ourselves saying things like, right, well, I must get to bed before
Mm.
9 o'clock because I've got a really big day tomorrow. It doesn't work.
No.
And a really big day tomorrow will be as good as it's going to be, irrespective of whether you had a good night's sleep or not, broadly speaking. And the other one is this misperception of the deficits when we have had a little period of time of not sleeping well. And when we misinterpret those deficits, what we do is we create fear in ourselves. And that's, in essence, the paradoxical sleep effect. The problem with sleep hygiene, here's that bit, is as I'm going to be super critical. Health professionals get sleep hygiene wrong. I'll tell you why they get it wrong. And there's a really brilliant study from the States, which for the life of me is escaping me at the moment. And it's about 4 or 5 years old. And what they did was they did a phenomenological study into people receiving sleep hygiene. So a phenomenological study is one of those ones where you look at the lived experience of those people who weren't sleeping very well, who received sleep hygiene input from their health professional. The finding was really interesting. What they found was health professionals very well meaningly give people like a handout with about 9 changes that they need to make to their sleep, which, I'm actually going to run through them. But what I'm going to say to you is, as you hear me taking you through the 9, 8, 9, whatever it is, numbers, the 8, 9 suggested things that you might want to do to improve your sleep hygiene. At the end of it, choose one or at the most 2. Because if we try and make such a huge lifestyle change that incorporates 10, for instance, that becomes unachievable. And what we do is we create a rod for our own backs,
Mm.
and we beat ourselves up and we're cross with ourselves and we don't achieve it. So we fail. And then rather than failing with just 1 or 2, we fail with the whole lot because we give up, because we just can't do it. What works well is to have a thing. do you know, I could probably do that one,
Yeah.
and just make that one or change. And then in a few weeks' time, when you've got that one taped, make another one then. So it's a cumulative process
Mm-hmm.
over a few months of building the sleep hygiene in over the period of about 2 to 3 months. And at the end of that 3 month period, you are very likely going to have really good sleep hygiene. And if you have really good sleep hygiene, you're going to sleep a bit better.
Yeah.
Just, you know, fact, really.
Yeah. Mm.
So the real one, you're going to know most of these guys. I know you're going to know most of these. So number one is caffeine lasts in the system for 12 hours. You know, if you're a sleeper like Mrs. Scanlon, she could have a cup of like the strongest coffee about 10 minutes before bed, and she'd still be lying there snoring away
And me.
in bed, you know, absolutely gone to the
Yeah.
world. Me, if I have a coffee after about 12 o'clock, you can guarantee that it will still be in my system. You know, we metabolize differently. Broadly speaking, if you're not a great sleeper, the last cup of coffee with caffeine in it, the last caffeinated drink you have, not much after midday, as a rule of thumb.
Mm.
Alcohol helps us drop off to sleep, but nearly always, if we're drinking to sleep, we end up waking in the middle of the night. Cigarettes, really bad for sleep if we're smoking. Um, Turn your bedroom into a sleep-friendly environment. And what I mean by this is the absolute number one is darkness. Now, some really good neurological studies, and the one I'm going to say of the sleep hygiene, if you make one change to your sleep hygiene as a result of my talk tonight, make it a dark room with a properly dark
Yeah.
room, because the darker the room, the greater the glymphatic clearance. The greater the glymphatic clearance, the less likely we are to develop, so the science is beginning to illustrate, those sorts of diseases of the brain later on. Because glymphatic clearance is so important as a preventative side of some of the dementias, etc. And more importantly than that, is it's very difficult to wake in the morning feeling restored without the glymphatic clearance. So if you're going to invest in something, invest in um, some light blocking blinds, perhaps. Make sure that we don't have lights on in the bedroom or even um, irritants. So darkness is really, really important. Again, the brain works with patterns, and the brain works with kind of like nudges, really, for sleep. And if we because we live with electricity, look, I've got two lights on in here. If we live with electricity, we don't get the melatonin shift that we need. And so if we're in a very light room all the way through till about 11 o'clock when we go to bed, then our brain hasn't started to produce melatonin, because melatonin is produced when the pineal gland notices. So that what happens is, as we notice the light diminishing, it triggers the pineal gland here in the eye to release the hormone melatonin. Melatonin is like the brain's way of saying, it's getting later, here's some drowsiness, start thinking about going to sleep. And melatonin is released during sleep windows. So we get one um, normally when dusk descends, we feel a bit sort of drowsy, a bit less awake. And then we usually work our way through it. We have our tea, we watch a bit of telly, and then we get another one after our meal. And then they come in sort of 2 hour cycles. You know, think of it as a train coming round and it comes back sort of 2 or 2.5 hours later. We need to be listening for that and looking for that. And when we get our sleep time, that's the optimum time for me. Try and sort of sleep at the same time if we can, but no rigidity about it. And certainly don't worry about it. And make the most of natural light in the day. The great Huberman, who's a neurologist from America, I think Stanford University. Yeah, he is Stanford. Huberman absolutely swears on the science of getting up, getting outside in the mornings, which starts our diurnal rhythms and puts us into a much more likelihood that we will sleep better at night. If you're not a great sleeper, try not to nap. A little bit of sleep hygiene. If you have to nap because of your condition or the medication, don't worry about it, but time your naps. Keep your naps to sort of 15 minutes. 15 minutes is as much as you need when we're napping. And if you can, get out in the mornings and have a bit of morning exercise, because that's going to make a difference and help us sleep better. So from all of those ones I shared with you, just think about one or two that you can do. The one I would say, as you know, is really important and very easy to do, is just make sure that your room that you sleep in is dark. That's probably the most important, because that's the one with the greatest evidence base for that lymphatic clearance. So make those lifestyle choices, but make them incrementally, slowly, compassionately, warmly, not with any, I've got to do this. Relax into it, really relax into it. Because without a doubt for me, we've got to get on top of, we need to be the boss of our own brains. And if we are the boss of our own brains, the way we think about sleep needs to be really relaxed, no threat language. Threat language I would count as, I really must get a good night's sleep tonight, or it's the must and the or the should and the or. That's what we're watching
Definitely.
out for.
Yeah.
So it really is. It would be great if I got a lovely, restful night's sleep tonight. And if I don't, I'm still resting.
Yeah.
I'm still relaxing. And for those of us with problems sleeping, one of the best pieces of advice I can always give you is go to bed with the expressed intent to rest and relax, because the power of linguistics is incredible. And if the brain hears us say, it's really important I sleep tonight, it's almost like you can imagine it waking up. What's this? What's the threat? Why is it important? And if you think about it, threat and the amygdala do not go well. So the amygdala sits about here, and it looks like two little almonds. Amygdala means almond in Latin. And these two, your amygdalae or amygdalae, they just sit, and they are the fear center of our brain. And if our amygdala becomes activated, our heart rate variability looks like this, like that. So it's really sort of unhelpful heart rate variability. Our heart rate variability is the electrical signaling that we get from the heart and the brain, and it lets us know if we're in sympathetic nervous system. If we get stuck a little bit too much in sympathetic nervous system, that tells us that our threat system in our brain is overactivated. And usually we overactivate our own threat system by winding ourselves up about the importance and the crucial nature of sleep.
Yeah.
Chill into it. Relax. I'm going to show you some stuff later that can switch off the sympathetic nervous system. So you switch it off before bed and you move into parasympathetic. And if we're in parasympathetic nervous system, it's as though the brain is aware that the human it's in charge of is safe. And if the human it's in charge of is safe, then that human is safe to sleep. Because when a human's at their most susceptible to attack, it's when we're unconscious. And this goes all the way back to those eponymous cave person times, And the brain, that part of the brain hasn't changed since, because we can't allow it to change, because our threat center is always switched on and vital for survival. So when is a human being at the most danger of being attacked? Well, unconscious. And when are we unconscious? When we're asleep. So the brain won't want you to be asleep if it perceives threat. And it's simple,
Interesting.
really.
It
It's
is
lovely.
really. Yeah.
So we need to switch off that threat thing. And we're going to do something. I'm going to introduce you to something. What I've done is I've sent, I think, about 3 audio files to Addy to make available for you
Yeah.
guys. One is, it's called somatic experiencing, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. The other one is NSDR, which you're going to love. And the third one is a wonderful thing called cognitive shuffling. Before we move to the cognitive shuffling, just a little word about our thoughts. If I said to you guys, when this finishes, I want you to imagine when my talk finishes, um, and you look at your phone and you've had 8 messages from your bank, and the messages from your bank come with the logos attached. You know, they've got little logos on them, their Facebook messages or their text messages, and they all say that your bank has been hacked, and you must immediately send us your security information so that we can secure your account. And none of you will fall for that, will you? In seconds, you'll use your wonderful, wonderful intellect, common sense. You'll use your ability to think with clarity, and you'll realize that you're being spammed. Your brain does the same thing about sleep. So your brain sends you, yeah, you need to go to sleep. If you don't get a good night's sleep, you'll be rubbish tomorrow. Spam. Yeah? So what really helps is to spot that brain spam, to smile at it, turn off the fear. Smiles are great for fear. Right from the 1920s, we called it the Duquesne smile, which is just a genuine smile. And the neurology of the Duquesne smile is fascinating. It just turns everything down. It just makes us feel. So we smile when we notice we're being spammed. Now, some people struggle with what we call sleep latency, very, very commonly, and that's a problem getting off to sleep. If we have a long-term condition, or if we are unwell, if there is threat in our lives, that's when sometimes we can use the somatic experiencing.
Sorry, Mike. I think this is a good gap to tell you. There's a couple of questions, and actually, one of them
Mm,
is kind of maybe will be answered by what you're going to say next. So it's Teresa, and she's asking, "I need some advice. I'm really suffering. I'm sure I go to bed at the same time, but find myself staring at the ceiling for hours, which is what you were talking about.
mm.
I get up and I'm still not tired. So um, that's tricky."
I think what I would be saying with that one there is, it sounds like you use the word suffering, and where suffering is about. So if we are actually suffering with this, then with suffering comes fear. With fear comes threat.
Mm,
The thing I was talking about earlier, the somatic experiencing, is about using a technique to make the brain realize that you are safe. The other thing I would think about trying is maybe going to bed a little bit later and aiming for that restorative sleep rather than lots and lots of sleep, you know?
yeah.
Um, the somatic experiencing probably would fit, because I'm guessing if have a cancer of any sort, it must be, well, I know it to be, a very, very scary thing.
Mm,
And so we buy into the importance of sleep for healing. Of course we do. It just makes sense. I understand that.
yeah.
And sometimes an awful lot of people I've worked with over the years who are struggling with any form of illness that is a threat, quite often what we need to do is we actually need to go very quietly. And what we do with somatic experiencing, it's a bit like you're sort of coming up alongside your brain, and you're saying to your brain as you work this, shh, it's all right, it's okay. Yeah, yeah, you're safe. Yeah, you're safe. And you find where it's sitting, there's a bit of fear. Shh, you're safe. And none of this stuff works immediately for a really obvious reason when you think about the way the brain works. The brain doesn't like anything new at bedtime. you know. So it won't work the first time, the somatic experiencing, but you just build into a new habit. As you lie there in bed, if you haven't dropped off, or don't wait not to drop off, you know, lie there in bed, and before you even try, just do some somatic experiencing. Turn off all those threats. Just get lovely and relaxed. And then just say to yourself, I'm not going to try and sleep. I am going to try and lie here and relax, smile, and just dream a bit. That's all I want to do. And changing that emphasis from I must sleep into I'm just going to relax, having done your somatic experiencing, might work for an awful lot of our attendees tonight, Addie, I think.
Yeah. I mean, how do you go about doing that though? That's the thing.
Well,
It's
you
if
follow the
you're really, really,
instructions.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess,
So
quite.
it's an audio file. It's my voice, and it's just walking you through. And essentially, what you're doing is you're doing a sort of body scan,
Hmm.
and you're taking your attention to wherever your anxiety or wherever your fear is
Hmm.
sitting. And we find where it's sitting, and it's always sitting somewhere bodily. And when you find it, you shh, it's all right, it's okay, shh. And you reassure that part of the body that we are safe, safe, safe. And after a while, it's a very somnolent experience to do it anyway. And a lot of people don't get to the end, you know, which is rather lovely.
Amazing. Yeah.
So sleep latency is the struggle to get off to sleep. Very common other one is when, particularly when you get to a certain age, is getting, or we've drunk too much in the day, is getting up in the middle of the night and having to nip to the loo. Now, the problem with that is I mean, I know this to be a fact, shared a room with one of my brothers, absolute nightmare, being on a walking holiday. And when he got up to go, every light was on. He looked at his phone. There would be an alert going off. If you switch a light on and you go from dark, the minute you switch a light on, if we were watching your melatonin as though it were a sort of like you could see your melatonin levels, as soon as you switch a light on, you see the melatonin in your system go zoom. It's like that, zoom. It's down. You know, so if you wake in the night, no lights. You know, enough so you don't trip over and break your neck. You know, just very gently and float. Just
Yeah.
float your way to the loo. Do what you got to do. Float your way back. When you get back into bed, this is when I want you to try some cognitive shuffling. Now, I've sent through a handout and a recording of the
Yeah.
great Baudin talking about it. So you'll see cognitive shuffling works as simple as this. You lie there in bed, and this is a great one if you have been woken in the middle of the night. You sort of slope off to the loose, come back, floating, not really waking properly, keeping your eyes as relaxed and as calm. Get back into bed and then choose a word. Let's take the word breath. And you take a word breath and you say to yourself, picture, the word breath starts with a B, so we start with the B's. Picture a bear walking through a woods. And use your brain to picture a bear walking through the woods. Picture a brown dog asleep in your garden. Picture a brown dog asleep in a garden. Picture a bluebird flying in the sky. Picture a bluebird flying in the sky. When you run out of B's, go to R. Picture a red balloon flying. You see, so you use the word breath or whatever word you choose. I like breath. Use the word breath, breath. And it's very rare that you get past about the A, uh, very rare you even get to the A, because what it does is it mimics dream sleep. Because when we're in dream sleep, what the brain experiences is random, no cognitive linear pathway. It doesn't make sense. So a brown bear, a brown dog, a robin, an elephant on the savannah, an egg in the cup. There's no link to them. So the brain is aware that you're lying there with words and pictures that aren't linked. And the brain says, oh, Addie must be dreaming. And it lets you go back to sleep. So it's a bit of kidology, but it
Yeah.
absolutely works. And maybe watch the film of the great Canadian psychiatrist explaining that. Now, I am aware of time, so I really importantly will make a big sell job on this next one because this is called non-sleep deep relax. And what I love about non-sleep deep relax is if you haven't had a great night's sleep, then when you wake in the morning, you get going, get your outside. At some point in that morning, spend about 12 or 13 minutes and do an NSDR. Now, the non-sleep deep relax has been shown to be neurologically rewarding, i.e., it you get many of the benefits that you would have got from a good restorative sleep in about 13 minutes of an NSDR. And if you want to read more of that, have a look at Huberman from Stanford University discussing it, because the evidence of it is it enhances when we do an NSDR. As a result of that NSDR, we learn better. It improves memory function. It de-stresses us. It improves cognitive capacity. It can be done at any time. Some people who don't sleep well use it to get off to sleep. So experiment with that as well. And it's not meditation. It's not breath work. It's non-sleep deep relax. And I've included a few links to try with some different voices there. Because as long as you're not panicking and worrying about your sleep, the joy of NSDR is that you can switch off that worry, because even if you don't get a great night's sleep, you just do an NSDR the next day. And much of that restorative input is gained from the NSDR. So if there's a lot of fear and anxiety in your life, before you go to bed, somatic experiencing. You may want to do some somatic experiencing. If you wake, try the cognitive shuffling. Make one or two changes to your sleep hygiene is my absolute suggestion there. And if you can, make it dark. Yeah, really, the darkness is important.
Yeah.
Not crucial, because nothing's crucial. It's just sleep. And remember, your brain spams you about your sleep. So see it as just brain spam and remind yourself that you're the boss, not your brain. That's quite important, that.
Yeah.
You're the boss, not your brain. And I think if you put some of that stuff, sleep hygiene, there's the really sort of like the foundational stuff there. Start to build some really good habits. Start to integrate some of the stuff I've shared with you tonight. Above all, watch out for that paradoxical worrying about your sleep. It just makes it worse. And go to bed with the intent to relax and dream and enjoy dreaming. And have a go at the various audios that I've sent through. They work. And there's a really good neurological evidence base for most of what I've done today, particularly that NSDR. Absolutely groundbreaking work, that.
Brilliant. And we can add all of those links that you sent,
Yeah.
and all that information
I mean, I
and
could talk
those
about sleep.
strategies to
We
help.
could do 2 hours easy,
Yeah, I
but
know. It's so interesting.
you would all be asleep by then.
Yeah, well, it is really relaxing
Yeah.
hearing you talk about it. It really is. And I think,
I love talking about it. I mean, I'm so fascinated by it, but we've really touched on the subject, but
yeah,
that should be enough to help people make those changes, I think.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, they may have other questions to ask. We haven't had as many questions focused on sleep, rather, but we have had actually, which I think you've probably answered really well, but Olga was asking, what is the definition of sleep hygiene? So what exactly is it? I mean, fair question,
Sleep hygiene it is lifestyle making lifestyle choices that enhance sleep rather
yeah,
than are detrimental to sleep.
yeah,
So choices about coffee, choices about light in the room, choices
yeah,
about it's sleep enhancing lifestyle choices.
lovely. um So, oh, I think we have just one more question here. So a question about, I don't know who asked that, but a question about when should a last drink of water be taken before bed, for instance.
Um, well, you know, if you're someone who wakes, it's a really good question, this one. If you're somebody who wakes because you need to go to the loo, we are much better to hydrate throughout the day because it's you know the all the cells become hydrated efficiently that way rather than do what you know, I was telling you about that brother of mine. You could see him before he
Yeah,
goes to bed at night, he'll drink a couple of pints of water, and I just looking at him saying, why are you doing that? And he's up about 3 times in the night waking me up every
yeah,
2 minutes, and I just look at that and I just think, no, hydrate throughout the day, and your last drop of water, you know, the last drink probably an hour before bed, I would say. I
yeah,
don't be, but whatever you do, don't get all. And if you're thirsty, just have a few. You know, just sip slowly,
yeah,
sip through the night. Much better than that stuff. Is hydration is very important for sleep and quite you know pretty important actually um, for lymphatic clearance. But
yeah,
keeping keeping saturated throughout the day is much better.
yeah. No, that's great. And what do you think about? I mean, because clearly, many of the sort of women we speak to, who are on steroids with
Mm.
chemotherapy, that obviously do actually really keep them awake. What do you think to sleep medication, for instance?
So all of the sleep medications, as you will know, because there's not a medication that doesn't have a side effect,
No,
but the
that's
problem
right.
with most of the sleep medications um, are, is that they actually, a lot of them cause anxiety.
Yeah, yeah,
And anxiety is probably one of the leading reasons why we don't sleep. So we can take, when sleep medication is useful, if we take it for to restore a sleep pattern, for no longer than about a week.
yeah,
And if we're taking it in that way to restore a sleep pattern, whatever you do, maintain the the sleep, the changes you make to your sleep, the healthy, wise, psychological, emotional changes, strategic changes that I've talked about tonight. Keep maintaining those, and just accept that as human beings, we go through periods when we don't sleep as well.
yeah.
We will always have. I remember Addy doing a sleep course once, and this South African guy came in, and he looks like absolute picture of health. And he sat down in this group. It was a live sleep group for over 6 weeks, and he said, "I can tell you now, I haven't had a single wink of sleep in the last 10 years." And we all looked at him, and actually, he wasn't. Impossible. You know, we can't do
Yeah,
it. What it was you don't know that you've fallen asleep because you, as I said before, you can't describe it. But you know, it just doesn't occur. People sleep.
no, yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's
Oh,
been a
my pleasure. Enjoyed
fantastic.
it.
Yeah, no, really, been really interesting and lots of information, lots of ways to help as well, which is brilliant. So, as I say, the links will all be up there um, under the posts. And if you've got any other questions, as I say, you can for Mike or myself or one of my colleagues, you can email them to us. You can ask them on the Facebook page, and we will actually answer them as soon as we can after this session. Um, and hopefully I can send those to Mike if they're relevant to you.
Absolutely.
If
Yeah,
that's
not a
okay.
problem.
Thank you. And you can phone our helpline on and the numbers on the page as well. And you can leave a voicemail message, and somebody will get back to you at 9 o'clock when the helpline opens again. You can email us, nurse at breastcancernow.org. Have a look on our web pages, breastcancernow.org, and look at our forums. And also, if you wouldn't mind filling in the survey, we like to evaluate the service to see how we're going and improve things. So please do that. And thank you so much for watching and listening. And hope you have a good rest of the evening. Thank you.
Yeah, have a lovely evening.